of entry Tesvav, and in Amud HaTefilah, it's the first entry in the pillar of davening, pillar of prayer for the Baal Shem to Parshas Noach. So Baal Shem is talking about this idea that yesh b'chol ois oilem is neshamas v'elikus. Every single letter, and a letter doesn't necessarily mean a letter. A letter means every single thing in this world, like we spoke about previously. That kol oilem kulam aleim oisis, the whole world is filled with letters, because letters, a letter, each single letter represents a pocket, a quality of a particular type of divine flow, of divine energy that comes into this world. And the ois, when we look at things in this world, what we're seeing is combinations of different types of letter combinations that are creating words, and therefore it's creating the objects. So the Baal Shem Tov says that b'chol ois yesh oilem ois neshamas v'elikus. In every single letter, every single existence, every single encounter we have in this world, there are three basic primary dimensions, which is world, which is the object that's being observed, or the experience that's being occurring, and then there's the person that's experiencing it. So there's the object that is the subject, there's the person and the experience, there's the oilmos and the shamas, there's the worlds and the souls. Souls is the consciousness, and then there's the likus, which is the divinity. Which means there's three things that are always happening here. Think about these three things and you'll never come to sin, which means the person thinks about three things that are every single encounter that they're having, every single experience that they're having, every single phenomenon really of experience, it has these three properties. There's you, there is the creator, God, and there's your experience that you're having in this encounter with something you're seeing, something you're hearing, etc. We said that on a deeper level. What this means is oilem is neshamas v'elikus means that every single thing in this world, every single ois, which means every single object and subject, has within it oilem ois, which is worlds. It's not a singularity. That means when you see, let's say we'll talk about people, when you see a person, you're seeing them in its one-dimensionality. You're seeing them as you're here and they're there, and you're having an encounter with them or a type of dialogue with them, or that not necessarily with the person, it could be with an animal, or it could be with a tree. Wherever that is, any type of encounter, there's always an encounter between you and something else, and each one is an individual. And then there's a deeper way of seeing it, that really every single thing in existence is connected to worlds. They're interconnected worlds. My world, my personal world, which is the end of my body, so to speak, where my body ends, and the life that's outside my realm, is really interconnected, and they're really part of one system. Like even on a physical level, on the physical plane, that the universe, the world, is part of one thing, one substance that multiplies and diversifies into the complexity of all of life. This is even what the Torah describes in the beginning of creation, when the Torah describes that the world was created. That Bereshis bar lekim es hashamayim v'aretz, in the beginning of the world was created, the heavens and the earth, which means es, as larabes, means everything was created in the first day of creation, the first representing of the first day of creation. And when it speaks about this first day of creation, which is the inception of creation, it doesn't call it Yom Rishon, day number one, when in sequence, which will follow day number two, but it calls Yom Echad, the singular day. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu was one in this world, which means that the world is created in the place of achdus, of unity, of a singularity. And then, from that singularity, it multiplied and it diversified and it manifested into many different types of forms. So when on a deeper, even on a physical plane, when a person interacts with this world, there is one way to see themselves as they're separate from the experiences that they're having in this world. And then there's a deeper level of understanding life, is that everything is actually included within you, and you're included within everything else. And your body doesn't end at your fingers. That's physically your body ends, literally the sensation of the body ends. But really your nefesh, your beingness is mispashet, expands itself throughout the entire universe, and everything is part of one ecosystem. On an ecological level, everything is part of one ecological system, which is that it's a one unified system. What one person does in one part of the world affects everything that happens on the entire world. That's why we spoke about before, what the Rambam says, that a person sees the world as shakel, everything is in a balance, and you do one mitzvah, positive deed, you balance the world for the positive, which means because every single action and thought and experience that you have is interconnected with everything else in this world. This is the level of oilamos. So a person has to recognize that every ois, every expression, every idea, every subject and object is really part of the inter-inclusion within this state of unity between everything else. Neshamas is the recognition that every single thing in this world has a particular neshama, a particular soul expression. A mazel she'omer l'gedel, like a certain type of mazel, a spiritual quality that says to exist. The tree is treeing itself because it's an angel, so to speak, that's saying, the tree of the angel that's saying, become a tree, which means that's the neshama, that's the individual expression of that thing. So when you look at the totality of the world, you'll say, I'm expressing me, and you're expressing you, and the tree is expressing tree, and the lion is expressing lion, and this collectively is all expressing the kvod Hashem, the glory of Hashem, the maloi chol eretz kvodei, the fullness of the creation, which means the multiplicity and the fullness. The letters are to connect themselves and are unify themselves to become one with Elokus, which means it moves up the level from the level of existence as an independent existence to recognition that it's part of Olam Mois, part of worlds, to recognition or consciousness or awareness that it's part of a soul expression, to recognition that it's only part of God, it's only part of the Ein Sof, the revealing of the infinite light that's revealed in the multiplicity of everything. And then he says, Baal Shem Tov continues, he says, Achar kach miyachtim u'miskashim yachad ha'oisis v'nasa teva. And then the letters, when we're talking literally about the letters, but it's every single pattern in this world, that the letters then become streamed together, and they become words. So words is the first, is a higher form of yichud, of unification, of liberation, of expansive consciousness. Why? Because the moment when you look at something and you see it as a letter, what's the difference between a letter and a word is when you're seeing a letter, you're seeing it in a very one-dimensional way. You're not seeing the full expression of this letter. But if you see a letter streamed together with a few letters, and it actually creates a word, and then the word creates a few more words, and it creates a sentence, and it creates a line, and it creates a narrative, all of a sudden you have a type of context that allows you to see and to make sense out of this world. Let's read one of the lines, then we'll get back to this. After the letters become unified and becomes a teva, becomes a word, there's something that is even deeper. Then they have yichudim amitim, perfect, true yichudim, true definitions of a yichud of unifications. What does that mean? This is a very big teaching in the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, a very important, a very fundamental teaching in Torah's Chassidus, in Torah's Baal Shem, in the teachings of the Baal Shem. And it has to do with language. That the reason why so many people are stuck, or people even suffer in this world, and are experiencing a hardship on a very existential level, part of the reason is because people don't have the correct language to give context to their existence, to give context to the experience that they're having. When a person doesn't have a context to help them understand why their life is this way. So let's say a person is, for example, okay, we'll take a very extreme example. Let's say a person, God forbid, has an injury in his leg, and therefore they need to go through surgery. So let's say this person is not an adult, but a child or certainly an infant that doesn't yet have a development, hasn't yet developed language. Take this child that's put under sedation and put under anesthesia and has to go through this process and wakes up in a tremendous amount of pain. Because the child doesn't have any context to understand that they're going through something that will bring them healing, it's much more painful. An adult that says, I broke my leg and it needs to be healed, I need to go through some type of surgery, I understand it's going to be painful, but I have a whole context. I have a whole story. And the story of that gives the context of the experience allows me to be freed of the constriction of the experience, allows me to have some type of redemptive or expansive type of connection to the experience that I'm going through. When it speaks about the story of the people of Klal Yisrael being in a state, the people of Israel being in a state of exile in Egypt, so the Zohar says is that their language was a Golos HaDibur, it was an exile of language. And then Moshe Rabbeinu, who was a Kvat Peh, also wasn't able to speak correctly because the people weren't able to hear, which means language itself was entrapped, eventually was a Moshe Yadaber. Moshe becomes the person of speech, and Klal Yisrael becomes Misaprim, Klal Yisrael becomes storytellers. The process of redemption is the process of giving context and giving a story to your life. When you don't understand and you can't give a context and you don't have the language to express what am I exactly going through, that in itself is the greatest constriction. So even worse than the actual, sometimes existentially worse or emotionally worse and mentally worse than the physical pain that a person is going through is the fact that they don't have any language to language the experience. So the moment a person is able to language the experience, to give it a certain type of context, to say I'm going through this is my relationship with my spouse, this is a relationship with my children, there's some type of difficulty that I'm going through, but I understand it in a greater context and it's going to come to a better place, that allows a person to be freed. That in itself is a type of existential freedom. So oisius on their own, which the Baal Shem will say very strongly, oisius on their own is a level of constriction, is a level of din, is a level of constriction. The moment the oisius become tevas, the moment the letters become words and they become sentences, that in itself is a yichud, that in itself is a unification, which means that allows me to unify with the experience, which means that I'm not experiencing something and I don't understand what I'm going through, and I would rather not have this experience, and I'm separated from it, and that alienation from the experience itself creates even greater frustration. But I can actually have a yichud with the experience. I can unify with the experience because I know why I'm going through it. I have language to understand it, and therefore, because I have language to understand it, that's a type of yichud. So that's the first level of yichud, the first level of unification, of redemption, and expansion, of geula, of a type of redemptive process is literally when letters become words. So when you don't do, and the way we experience life, that means is that I'm not seeing things as individual things, as this ois, this letter, and that letter, that letter. I don't understand what the letters are, but I'm moving the letters together and I'm actually creating a sentence. When I create, and I'm creating a word. When I'm creating a word and creating a sentence, it gives me language, which is the redemptive process, the healing process of my experiences. That's one level of yichud. But the Baal Shem says that it's not enough that the letters become words, but it's even more important, or a higher level of importance, is achakach misyachtim yechudim amitim balakus. Then there's going to be yechudim amitim, correct yechudim, together in unification with the divine expression. What does that mean? What that means is as follows. Just like there's an idea that the Ari speaks about, which is shviras hakelim, the breaking of the vessels, the Baal Shem Tov talks of something that's called shviras ha'oisius, the brokenness of sound, the brokenness of letters, which means like this. Better than having no context is having a context. Better than having no language is having a particular language. But it's not ultimately the best possible solution, because it's possible that the context that you have is not a correct context. The way you're languaging your experience is inauthentic. It's not the correct way you should experience, the way you should language the experience. If you're saying, I'm going through this hardship, and this represents this to me, and you language it in this particular way, okay, it allows you an emotional way to go through this process itself. But who said this is the yichud amiti? Who says this is the correct expression of what has to be experienced? So you're labeling your experience as, let's say you lost your job, and so and that's ois, that's like a letter, and you don't understand it. So then you give it some type of context and some type of language, and you say, oh, I lost my job because I did this and that, and I'm going through now this time, and I'm not feeling in a good place, but eventually, maybe you'll get into a better place. That's one way of languaging it, and that in itself is a type of healing. But maybe that's not it. Maybe that's not the true thing that's going on here. Maybe there's something deeper that's being told to you, that you gave it language and you gave it a particular context, but it wasn't the correct context. Maybe in the language of the Baal Shem Tov, it was it was broken letters. You streamed together a bunch of letters, a bunch of experiences, and you created an experience, a context, a language for it, but maybe it's not the correct language. So it is a little bit healing because you have some type of tefillah, you have some type of a grasp of the experience that you're going through, but maybe it's an incorrect, maybe you just language it in an incorrect way, maybe in an unholy way. Let's say, God forbid, a person, you go to some type of person that's a healer and gives you wrong advice. That's inconsistent with who your neshama is, what your soul is, and gives you inconsistent advice because maybe they don't know you well, or they're not, maybe they're not licensed, or they really don't understand you, and they tell you the wrong advice. It's possible that it's a type of advice that you can hold on to, but maybe because of that, you're going to have more trauma in your life and more negative experiences. So in order to truly be freed, and this is the process of davening. This in itself is the process of davening. The process of tefillah, the process of prayer in itself, and the way the Baal Shem Tov is understanding is the mere fact of reading the words of Torah or tefillah, or learning or davening or prayer, the mere fact of reading the sacred words of the Torah, the sacred words of davening, that in itself is streaming together the various sounds and giving a particular context of a yichud amiti in a correct expression. It's giving a language in the best possible, in the most holy and the most pristine and transcendent way, in its and most importantly, in the most correct way. So the she'ifa, the desire, is not only to give language, to take letters and create language, therefore it creates some level of healing, but it should be yichud amitim. They should be correct. They should be truthful yichudim, and a truthful yichud is one that's expressing the divine desire at this moment. And that's already something that we need a deeper level of awareness that we should merit to have. Not only the right light, not only should we not experience life in the form of just very particular random things that we don't understand its interconnectivity, and on a higher level, we should experience life in a way that we could understand its connectivity and stream it together as words and sentences and give it context and language. But that we should merit to actually be able to see the correct yichud, to create the correct language. So language, in a very deep way, what the Baal Shem Tov is saying, and anticipated a lot of wisdom that was revealed many years afterwards, that the Baal Shem Tov is teaching something very phenomenal and something very profound, that it's with the power of our language and how we language things, whether we're going to be, the lack of language, whether we're going to be in a very constricted state, whether we're going to have language that's going to be a type of yichud, that's one type of level of unification, which will redeem us on some level, but ultimately the ultimate way to redeem ourselves and to be in a better state in life is if we have the yichud amiti, the correct, honest, and the most authentic and divine spiritual way of languaging our lives. So that's the Baal Shem Tov saying that the language, the ois, then becomes a yichud amiti with the tevis, with the letters themselves become unified to become words. The words themselves is a type of yichud, and then the highest level of the world is the yichud amiti melikus. That's the first stage, which is something in itself should be pondered and thought about very, very deeply, because this is very important, certainly in a modern way of thinking about the world in terms of our interaction with the world, of how we language the world and how we define things, and the way we say things about things. Certainly, to talk with lashon nakiya, to talk in a pure language, not to be coarse, not to curse, God forbid, not to say things are negative, not to even talk negatively, to always always speak positive. Don't call things in its negative way, but talk things as positive and its absence of positivity. This is a way of redemption. This is a way a person lives a geula life, a redemptive life, a messianic life, something that's connected to something that's higher and deeper. Now the Baal Shem Tov continues and says, and therefore a person has to connect themselves. Remember, we start off with the premise. The beginning, the Baal Shem Tov started and said that everything really has worlds, souls, and divinity. And a person's really, on a very deep level, is one with worlds, divinity, as souls and divinity. There's a yichud. So he says, the Baal Shem Tov says that when a person enters into the state of davening, enters into the state of prayer, what they should do is they should connect themselves. Lichel nishmasa, he should connect his own soul. On every single level, on the level of ois, a level of the letter of worlds, souls and divinity, and the level of teva, the level of words, on these three levels of worlds, souls, and divinity, and the level of yichudim amitim, in its correct form, on the level of worlds, souls, and divinity. And we should connect ourselves. And the connecting is a yichud. Yichud is a unification, means we're not creating something, we're revealing that we're already interconnected with everything. So when we daven, the first thing that we should do is recognize that we are interconnected with the entire world. Everything is interconnected. It's all part of us. When we say dal damas kindness, like that, the four cubits of a person is kindness with tzid shus on the side of shus of a public space that you make a kinyan, because the person is mispashet in the dal damas. The person is the amount of dal damas, which is about 6 feet, is the length of a person, an average person, 5.5 feet, the length of an average person when they lie down, which means that is part of the spashus, the expansion of your own consciousness, of your own self, is interconnected with everything that's around you, and on a very big level with every single thing that ever existed in all of time and all of space. All part of one Yoim Echad, started off as a singularity, and we're all part of that one. So when a person starts to daven and recognizes this awareness, and later it's brought down in other form. The Ben Ish Chai brings down that before Shemon Esrei, before a person stands in the Amidah, they should look around the room to see what they're davening with physically, but on a very deep level, you're davening with everything. Everything is davening with you. Once the Alter Rebbe asked the son, the Mittler Rebbe, Dov Ber, asked him, with what did you daven? What intentions did you daven with? And his son, the Mittler Rebbe, said that he davened with Yichudi Law, with some type of higher level of unification, of deep meditation, contemplation. And his son asked his father, the great Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, he says, what did you daven with? What did you pray with? And he said he prayed with the shtanda. He prayed with the actual table that was standing in front of him. Which means he prayed with everything that was around him. The whole world prayed with him. So now, when a person davens from this state, when a person prays from this state, then all the worlds become unified. Then it becomes a great joy and pleasure on high. What is he saying? He's saying like this, that when a person prays, a person davens from an awareness that you are the mouth that is speaking the words of the prayer. Of course, you're the one that has the instruments and has the capacity and the mind to speak the words of Hashem Sefas HaTiftach. Open up your mouth and sing Hashem's praise. But who are you? You just created a yichud with Olam Hashem Sefas. You created a yichud on all realms. We said Olam Hashem Sefas. We spoke about this a week ago, and a few weeks ago. We said Olam Hashem Sefas represents all the realms of reality. Bri, Yitzir, and Asiyah. The world of creation, the world of formation, the world of actualization, which means we connect ourselves with the entire world. So when you were davening, when you were saying the words of tefillah, and you were saying yichud mamitim, you were actually expressing not only in oisius, in letters, and not only in tevis, in words, but you were saying the correct words, the yichudim amitim, the correct, authentic yichudim of the nusach HaTefilah, of the language of davening, the language of the prayers, or you were learning Torah, you were learning Hashem's Torah, you were expressing the yichud amiti, the correct yichud. So when you're expressing this yichud amiti, this correct, perfect unification, who is actually expressing this? The entirety of the creation is speaking these words. This is really what the Gemara says in Chul. The Gemara says that there was a man was not created. It didn't rain until man cried and davened and prayed for the rain. Because when man prayed for the rain, the world prayed for the rain. It wasn't man. The man was using his mouth or her mouth to daven, to say the words of davening, to pray to Hashem for the rain. But it was like as if the earth itself and the entire planet was crying and in a posture of tefillah, of openness and receptivity to receive rain from above, from on high. Which is, when a person davens, it's not only their davening, the whole world is davening. Everything is davening. When they're praying, the whole world is praying through them. They're the mouthpiece of creation. So maybe other things cannot pray in their correct way, or maybe they can. But when you're speaking, certainly with humans, you become and connecting to all human beings, you become the speaker that's expressing the desire of the ilah of the olul to be connected to the ilah, of the desire of the effect to be connected to the affected, of the effect to be connected to the original cause, the desire to be connected to something higher. That's the yearning of tefillah. That's the yearning of davening, of prayer, which is the soul yearning to be connected to something that's higher. So who's yearning? Who's expressing? And who's expressing this correct yichud? The entire world. And since the entire world is now expressing it through your mouth, this becomes a great joy on high. Why is it a great joy on high? Why is it simcha v'taina gadol? Why is it great joy and great pleasure on high? Because when the world is not in its yichud amiti, when the world is not expressing its correct speech, its correct language, its correct expression, and the world means everything in the world, whether a tree is dying because it didn't get nutrients, or an animal is hungry, or another person suffering, what's happening in the world, and the world is not in its perfect, beautiful, expressive, divine state, that's because Shekinah begalusa. The Shekinah, the divine life force. And Shekinah itself is either kavod habayir or kavod nivra, which either that's machlekes rishonim, that's argument amongst the commentaries, if it's part of the glory of Hashem or the glory of man, but it represents a light of Hashem that enters and is shechenes and enters into every single specific thing in the creation. So when there's a tree that is not healthy, or God forbid, when there's a person that is in an unhealthy state, it's the real issue is, of course the person is unhealthy and that's terrible, but the meta reason why the person is unhealthy is because the Shekinah is entrapped there, and the Shekinah can't express itself correctly. When the Shekinah expresses itself correctly, if the Shekinah would not be in Gullus, the Shekinah would not be in a state of exile, but the Shekinah would be not in a sukkah David HaNefilah, it's not in a state of falling, but the Shekinah would be elevated in its correct way, and it'll be a Gilui HaShekinah, it'll be a revealing of the Shekinah, that every single thing in this world would be exactly in its most healthy and expressive way, in its most correct manner, in the Yichud Amiti, in its correct Yichud. And the fact that it's not is because of Shekinah begalusa, because the Shekinah is in exile, and it has to do with man, it has to do with a person's consciousness and a person's actions, that we lower the Shekinah, and therefore the Shekinah is not in a correct way. So when, in the reverse, when you're speaking, and you're speaking a yichud amiti, and now you're expressive, you're expressing your soul, and you're expressing it in the most correct way, you're giving it the most correct language of expression, in the most correct and honest and beautiful and divine expression of its existence, and you're expressing in that way. Who's expressing it now? Everything. So the Shekinah is now revealed in all of the worlds, because you're part of all the worlds, and now you're speaking these words of Yichud Amiti, these perfect unifications, and that's the correct expressions of yourself, and in unification and in singularity with everything that exists within the creation. So when you're speaking, the trees, the mountains, everything is now speaking its divine, its correct expression. This is why it speaks about tzaddikim in the metaphor. However we understand that is, it speaks about great tzaddikim that they went to pray in the meadows, when they were praying in the fields, that the animals themselves would jump up on their two legs, or it speaks about the Baal Shem Tov, and they would also sing together with the Baal Shem. What that actually means is, that's the only truth that could be, if we are, in fact, on a deep level, and we are, interconnected with everything else in the world, on the level of Oinim, Shabbos, and Lakus, and we enter davening in a state that we actually think about it, on a conscious level, not just on a subconscious level, but consciously we think about it, and we enter into this kavanah, this intention of this interconnectivity with everything. So we're expressing, and we're giving language to letters, which become words, and we're expressing them in the Yichud Amiti, and we're saying, Haluk al Malach, Haluk al Tzavav, and we're saying, praise Hashem, and praise Hashem for the creation. Who's speaking these words of praise? Every single thing in creation. So of course the animals also are jumping up and saying praise, because that is actually what's happening. You're just the mouthpiece, or the shliach, but not only the shliach is representative. You are part of that. It's like you look at the whole world as one Adam Gadol, like Chazal say, like a one primordial being, one big human being, and you're the mouthpiece of the world now. And you're speaking those words, and everything is being elevated, and therefore there's this tremendous simcha gedola, because there's tremendous pain. The Shekinah is in tsar. The Shekinah is in a state of tsar. However we understand that, is in a state of pain, and the pain of the Shekinah is because it cannot express itself correctly. You know, for a simple example of that is, let's say you are you're in a different country, and you don't speak the dialect, the language of the people that are speaking there, and you need something, you're thirsty, and the only way to get the drink is to tell the other person that you're thirsty. But you don't know how to say it, and you can't gesture with your hands for some reason. And then, so that's a tremendous amount of pain because you can't express yourself. Or someone's doing something to you that you don't like, but you don't have the words to express it. That's a tremendous amount of pain. Pain is something, tsar is when something is inside and you want to express it and you can't because you don't have the language. That's a tremendous amount of pain. And that's what the Shekhinah's pain is. The Shekhinah's pain is that the Shekinah wants to shine brightly. And if the Shekinah is shining brightly, then everything's working correctly. Everything is exactly healthy and holy and perfectly doing the intention of the Creator, doing it at every moment. That's when the Shekinah will shine clearly. So when you see someone, that the Shekinah rests on a person's face, what does that mean? It means the person's doing exactly what they should be doing in this world. So when everything is doing the correct thing and the Shekinah is revealed, that's a tremendous release of the pain. That's B'chol Chosam Loitzar. There's no tsar. That's a Lamed Aleph tsar, not Lamed Vav tsar. There's Loitzar because it's now redeemed. That's the level of when the Shekinah becomes revealed. So when a person davens in this way, then it becomes a tremendous amount of joy on high. This is what it says in the ark in the Teva of Noach. In the ark of Noach, the Teva is the words. What is these three levels? Is Olam Zesham B'Salikus. Those are the three levels of worlds, souls, and divinity. And what the Zohar calls Tlas Alman Yisrael. What the Zohar calls the three realms of reality, which is spoken before, is Bri Yitzir Asiyah. Or Atzillah is Bri Yitzir, and the Ois will be Asiyah. Now the Baal Shem Tov continues and says, "Vitzarach lishmoya b'chol teva mashoimer." A person has to hear very carefully. He has to hear what he's speaking. Because Shekinah Elam HaDibur, because Shekinah itself is the world of Dibur. Medaber Sheshvina Lo, and he's now the Sheshvina. He's the carrier. He's the Unterfer. He's the one that's holding up the Shekinah. He's the conduit through the Shekinah speaking. What does this mean? The Shekinah is Elam HaDibur. The Shekinah is Elam HaDibur. Elam HaDibur means the world of speech. It doesn't mean only speech. It means the world of speech. In the Shekinah is the world of expression. So there's Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, there's the different midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, different attributes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and then there's Malchus. Malchus Pekarina. Malchus is connected to speech. That speech is connected to the world of kingship, of Malchus, of royalty, which is the idea of Shekinah. What does it mean that the Shekinah is Dibur? Shekinah Dibur means that the expression of Kaviyachol, of Hashem's light in this world, is as a metaphor of how we would speak. Just like in speech. Speech is an expression of how we're feeling. The same thing, the expression of Hashem's light in this world is through speech. But on a deeper level, it is exactly through speech, literal speech. The Shekhinah's, the level of the Shekinah, let's phrase it a little differently. The level of the Shekinah in the world is sort of the spiritual temperature of the world. The spiritual temperature in the world means sometimes the world is at a high level spiritual temperature, which means that the atmosphere is filled with a divinity, with a sense of elikus, with hechikat, with higher and edelkeit and refinement. Sometimes the world is in that state, or at least in your dalamas and where you're surrounded, and sometimes the world is in a lower state. So the Shekinah is the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of Hashem in this world, and it's the tangible temperature, let's say, of how the spiritual realm is. And how do you test that temperature, so to speak? If you test the temperature, it's brought up by many tzaddikim that you have to see what are women speaking about in the street. What does that mean? Because women are connected generally to Malchus, which is the idea of Shekinah. And when a person speaks intentionally, then you can't know what the temperature of the situation is. But when a person speaks, just they're just speaking, then you can tell what the temperature is. Let's give an analogy of this. If you walk into a person's home and it's a friend of yours, you walk into a person's home and they're on their best behavior and they're saying the right things to you and they're being like a really good host, you can't really get what is the temperature of the home. Is it a loving home? Is it an embracing home? Is it a compassionate home? Because the person's on their best, trying to do their best, on their best behavior, and therefore it's like a certain type of expression that's happening in the house, but that's not the real expression. The way you really know what is happening in a home is the way people talk to each other nonchalantly. Like, what is the language of the home? Do people use coarse language in the home? Do people use refined language? Do people raise their voice? Do people not raise their voice? When they're just talking, not when they're in their best behavior hosting, but when they're sitting around the table and everyone just relax, is the voice, is it condescending? Is it raised? Is it have anger? That's the way you can tell the temperature of the home. So the temperature of the home is the Shekinah within every single home. That's the spiritual temperature in every single home. And that's expressed through the words that are spoken in the home. That's why there's Zachar Shekinah b'neim, that if a man and a wife create a home, and the Shekinah rests in the home, how do you tell if the Shekinah rests in the home? It's how they talk to each other. By talking to each other, you know how people, what is really the relationship going on. Not by physical gestures, because a lot of people can do very nice things for their spouse, and it doesn't really represent the relationship. But how they speak to each other, how they speak to each other in private, and how they talk to each other about just the mundane things in life. Is it with love and with care, or God forbid the opposite, is with anger, etc. That's the temperature. Say the tzaddikim, say the righteous ones, and say that if you want to tell what the temperature of the world is, at any given moment, you have to see what people are speaking about in the street. Particularly women, because Tisha B'Av, and especially women are connected to speech. So if you want to see what the temperature in the world is, see what people are speaking about. Are people talking about sports, or they're talking about politics, or they're talking about something more spiritual? And that's, you can tell this, the level of the temperature on the world. That's the Shekinah. That's the presence of the Dibur. Now, let's go back to what we're doing when davening. When you're davening, let's go back to the idea. When you're praying, when you're saying the words of davening, we said, well, you're doing it with a yichud amiti, you're doing it with a yichud of olam shamas, because you're connecting yourself with everything that's in around you, and you become the mouthpiece to express the yichud amiti, the correct expression, which means that the Shekinah now, the divine temperature of the world is rising through the yichud amiti, which is the Shekinah's presence in a revealed way. And now, because everything that was trapped and didn't have the Shekinah was in exile, the Shekinah was in a state of exile, of constriction, and was not able to express itself correctly. But now you're expressing it in a correct way. So who's really talking? The world is talking, but what's really being expressed on an even deeper level, yes, you're doing the expression, is Hashem Sefasei Tiftacha Fi Yagiti Losacha. You're speaking the words, but you're saying, Hashem, open up my mouth and let the Shekinah rest on my mouth and speak. I am now a vehicle, a medium, a sheshvina, unterfer, someone that's carrying and allowing for the Shekinah to be presented and revealed in this world in its correct form. Which is even a deeper awareness. So in other words, not only is the world speaking through me, but kaviyachol, the Shekinah is speaking through me, and the only way the Shekinah can speak correctly, which means the only way the Shekinah could be expressive in this world, is through the mouth of man. So that when I'm doing this with intention, if I have this intention, I'm doing this with kavanah, and I'm speaking the words, the Shekinah is resting. Midaber Shvina. Now I'm the Shvina, the Shekinah. I'm the carrier, the upholder of the Shekinah's presence that's being revealed in this world. This is, again, it's a remarkable thought to think about when a person starts to daven, when a person prays, or anytime when a person is speaking, because on a deep level, this is happening every moment. So therefore, says the Baal Shem HaKadosh, Tzoyer sheteitzav b'hirus. Therefore, when you say the words of davening, when you speak the words, when you speak words of Torah, when you speak words of Tefillah, and when you speak any type of words, like the Rambam writes in the Pirush HaMishnah, is that we always should speak words of wisdom, of intention, of meaning. Whenever we speak words, we should take some here. It should come up beautifully. It should shine. That it should be a nachas ruach. It should be pleasurable on high, because we're actually co-creating now in this process. We're revealing the Shekinah's presence through the speech that we're speaking. We have to have tremendous amount of faith in this idea. Faith doesn't mean an abstract faith. Shekinah means, Shekinah itself is amunas amen, means something that we have to work on. It's avoid, it's asik. We have to toil with it. It's like a working person. So we have to work on this amunah, work on this faith, that we should enter into davening in this way, enter into tefillah with this mindset. I'm connected, I'm interconnected with everything. I'm the mouthpiece of everything. The Shekinah is resting on my mouth. I'm expressing the yichud amiti, and the world is being elevated through me and with me. And I'm being elevated through that. Without the emunah, without this faith, without this steadfast emunah, this faith in this process, then we could be, God forbid, like a gossamer that separates from the ruler, God forbid, which is the negative. But obviously, let's talk about the positive. That's what it says at the beginning of the pasuk. The beginning of the pasuk says that tzara tasel teva. Like the Baal Shem to start. Tzara tasel teva. You should make a tzara tasel teva. You should make a tzara, something brilliant, whether it's a gem or it's a window. But in here, the Baal Shem says it's a lichtik. It should be illuminated. It should be. You should enter fully with your entire self and your entire being into the words that you're speaking. And to do the yichudim, to do the unifications with olam, neshamas, and lakus, with worlds, souls, and divinity, and in all three levels, from the level of ois, from the level of word, a letter, to the level of words, until there should be yichud amitim, the correct expressions, the holy expressions, the transcendent expressions of its correct way, to languish things in its mamish and its literal best possible way, most holiest possible way, and that should be as galas Shekinah, and through that the Shekinah should be revealed in this world. The lights, so to speak, should be illuminated, and everything should be lit up. And then the verse continues, and then it should slope upwards and peak, and it should peak on top. So what is this al-amma? So the Baal Shem says two words. First of all, amma means ima. Ima means bina, mother. Mother represents the sphere of bina, of understanding, of consciousness, of awareness. So he says the first thing is also, what does it mean? Amtachanu means you should do this with awareness. You should do this fully with awareness. So you should enter fully in this process, in a meditative state, in a contemplative state, to enter fully with this yichud, unification. It's a very, it's not an abstract mental state, but it's a visceral sensation that you feel the attachments, the vibration, the expansion of self into everything else, and the expansion of everything else within yourself, and you're vibrating back and forth with everything else in the universe. And that visceral sensation of the oilam and shabbos l'kus, and then lift everything together with as you're davening. You should do this with awareness. And then he says another interpretation of Amud HaTefilah, that once a person says the words of davening, you entered it fully. It was brilliant. It was shining. You did all the yichudim, all the unifications that you did. You allowed the whole world to elevate yourself, to be elevated through your speech. You understood that the Shekinah is speaking through you, the Shekinah is becoming revealed, and you spoke words that the word should be healed, that the Hashem should bring down refuah, should bring healing to this world. So once you do that, then afterwards, stop. Don't try to see exactly where it goes. Put yourself fully into the process. Enter fully consciously with ima, with intention, with mindfulness into the process. But don't wait for the results. Let go of the expectations. That's another way of saying it. There's something that's called in Chazal, Iyan Tefillah. There's a positive Iyan Tefillah, negative Iyan Tefillah. Iyan Tefillah can mean either to focus deeply on your davening, like Taisa says, or it actually can refer to Iyan Tefillah like anticipation of when my prayers are going to be answered. The Baal Shem says, put yourself into it fully and just let it go. Let it go. Now you released it into the cosmos. You just released it to Kadosh Baruch Hashem receives the prayer, and now other things have to be moved, things have to be shaken around, and that's not none of your business anymore. That's what you do. You put yourself out there, fully. That's what he says. How could you do this? How could you actually enter this fully and then let go? He says precisely by doing that. When a person puts himself into something very fully, you, your whole family, should enter fully into the letters, into the words of the Torah, into the prayer. Every ounce of your body, every ounce of energy that you have in your body, and any mental and emotional state that you have in your body, to enter fully, you should enter fully into the prayer, into the words of davening, the words that you're saying during tefillah. And that itself allows you to let go. So here's again a very wonderful idea. What the Baal Shem Tov is saying is, he's saying that not only should you do this, that you should enter in fully and then let go, because that's already, you released it. Something was changed in the universe because of what you did. Exactly how it's going to change and how it's going to manifest in the physical world is not something you should follow. You put yourself out there, you put it out there. But then he says even in deeper, the fact that you're going to put yourself fully into it is in itself going to allow you to let go. Because sometimes when a person puts themselves fully into something, with all your koiches, with all your energy, with all the strength of your being, you enter into these words with all your intention and with your entire body. Your whole body is like into this and fully present into this. That in itself, the moment you finish, that's it. You're depleted. you just end, and it's ended. And that's true. That's the way you're supposed to experience it. So at the end of the davening, it's like a release, because you put yourself in fully. It's like a spiritual workout, and then you let go. Like literally, you're tired. And that is the idea of Amud HaTefilah, that Hashem should hear our prayers, Hashem should hear our tefillos, and answer our tefillos in the exact way, the way Hashem knows it should be answered. So this is the idea of Tzarat Asal Teva. This was, Baruch Hashem, we finished the first Ois, the first entry, which comes in Tzivas HaRevosh, and it's Ois Tes Vav, which is the 15th entry in Amud HaTefilah in Parshas Noach. And God willing, next week we'll continue with Ois Tes Zayin, which comes from Keser Shem Tov. All right, have a wonderful week.